Okay, so I've never streamed live before, so sorry if I break everything. Um, I have about an hour before I have other things to do, so we're going to jump right in. We are going to be looking at day one of Grace Jabbari's testimony through the transcript. If you look in the description, you will see a link to the folder I've created with all the transcripts I have obtained. If you want to contribute to the GoFundMe, that can compensate me for what I put into it because it costs, I think, $2,650 something and change. The link for that's in the description as well. Don't pull out all your coins. Don't put yourself on the struggle bus to help by any means. But if you can and want to contribute, I would greatly appreciate it. Let's jump right in. Also, I'm on my laptop because I'm traveling, so I only have one screen, but I do have my phone sitting with the live chat there, so I will be trying to make sure I can communicate with you guys if you comment anything. And let's jump right in. If I have to leave abruptly, you're just going to see me go like this and clock on out because we have call time at 9 p.m. Eastern. All right, so page one, and again, I believe this is day one of her testimony, but it's December 5th was the date. And then this is Grace Jabbari. She's sworn in. We're not going to read all of that. Then she goes over her family background, how many siblings. Her older sister's 33. I hope I haven't gotten that wrong. My younger brother, this is a test, isn't it? My young brother is 26, and my younger sister 16. And the important part here is establishing that her one sister lives here in New York. And it's Galloway doing the questioning, by the way. So, what do you do for a living? I'm a professional dancer. How long have you been dancing? Since I was, well, unprofessionally since I was 3, but professionally since I was about 19. See, that's a problem. You should have dated someone that had rhythm from birth. And when you say professionally, what do you mean by that? Well, I trained in ballet mainly, so a few ballet schools, but ballet and contemporary dance. I worked with multiple kind of UK-based dance companies and then moved into working into film for musical artists, things like that. Can you tell the members of the jury about the training you received during your education? Yes, I went to just like a standard, typical church hall dance school when I was up to the age of about 16, and then I got accepted with scholarship into this full time school where I did my A levels. I don't know the American equivalent, but the exams you do before university. I did them there as well as full time dance training, and then after that, I joined a school the equivalent of a university called Rambert, which is the ballet and contemporary professional training school. Did you specialize in any sort of dance there? I then specialized, well, we did ballet and like hone clean work and partner work every day, but mainly my preferred style was contemporary dance, which is a bit more free. Yeah. The scope of, and remember, Jimmy described her demeanor as being like free spirited. So that makes sense. And what did you do after finishing your schooling? Well, I was in my last moments of school. I joined a company. Sorry, just making sure. Oh, hold on. Is my volume a little better? You said you were watching the Cat Williams interview and said, let's go watch Cat. Yeah, I'm happy to see some positive things about another cat. There's some other cats out there. I won't drag any cats out of the bag, but they're not very good people. I am blocked by Cat 10 Barge on Twitter, so that's one of them. But other than that, I won't go into details. Let me know. I will check on the volume. So let me know if you need to turn it up. After that, I ended up signing up to do a master's in contemporary art and dance, which I did alongside and working on more freelance projects. And that's what continued my career, freelance. Shorter periods of time in a company, but I liked working with a range of different people, basically. When you say freelance work, what do you mean? Meaning you're not signed up to a contract, like this is where you're going to dance for 3 years. It's more like you do this job, this is 3 or 4 months, and then what do you want to do next? Basically, you find it yourself. People come to you. It's more flexible. What kind of jobs did you do? The first in my career was mainly company work, touring, live shows, yeah, which is like a process of rehearsal, go and learn, make the work or learn something that's already been made. And then you tour it or do a few shows of it. And then, kind of within that, I would start dancing with musicians or kind of shoots with brands when they wanted dancers. Yeah. So she did like some modeling with jean companies. She also did dance in like the Barbie movie, all related to dance and kind of like visuals that involve the body form. Oh, thank you. And then, let's see. And this is a lot of background, although it is important here to get a feel of, you know, her the way she speaks, her grammar. This is like casual questioning, general conversation. It's not really high pressure, although she might be nervous because she just got on the stand. But it's a good way to gauge like her kind of baseline when you're talking about a normal topic, what her grammar is like. Let's see. Just going on her film history. Oh, and there was an objection here. So, what was your role on the film? So, they're about to talk about Quantumania. I was a movement director. I was given the job because my friend who, objection non responsive, overruled. You could answer. Sorry, thank you. I was given the job as to assist a woman I had worked with in the context I said a minute ago about how she would get me in to choreograph on me, and she needed an assistant for this because it was like huge, like so many extra cast people in costumes where they weren't meant to be human. So I guess that's probably like harder. You have to like deal with choreographing around a weird form, an unusual form. So it was working with hundreds of people, so she needed an assistant. It was only meant to be 2 weeks. So we came in and worked with her for 2 weeks, and then they asked us to stay and continue working on the whole film. So she had prior commitments, so I stayed in on it on my own, more or less. The rest of the film to do the same thing. And then where was the film located? It was being filmed in a place called Pinewood in United Kingdom. When we're working, and okay, cool, we finally get into meeting Jonathan Majors. So when working as a movement director, did you come to know a man by the name of Jonathan Majors? Yes. Do you see Mr. Majors in the courtroom today? Chaudhry jumps in. Your Honor, we stipulate to Mr. Majors' identity. And the court's like, all right, do you see him? Yes. Galloway says judge, and then the judge indicates Mr. Majors, because they have to get that into the transcript. Galloway asks, how did you come to know the defendant? Originally, I was introduced by the first AD, which is the first assistant director. So the director has a lot of assistants, and the first one is the one who takes charge of the set each day. And he just, because it was the first time on that particular set, just said, this is Grace. She's doing movement. This is Jonathan. And that was the kind of interaction, just pretty much like, hi, nice to meet you. And the following day, I believe he was working on a scene where he was very active in the scene, but there were 2 people who I was working with to help with their movement, and they interacted with the CGI, which doesn't actually exist, so you have to pretend. So I was just helping the director, the kind of CGI people, to clarify their movement. And so that was a day where there was a lot of contact, but not verbal, between me and Jonathan. So she's saying that she was like part of that? That's a little confusing. He was very active in the scene, but there were 2 people. It's like, that means she was working with him too in this whole day, but I don't know, that seems like weird wording. So then in one of the breaks, he came over to me where I was stood, just nearest the monitor, and just kind of asked me what I was doing, why I was here. And I said, oh, I'm a dancer. I'm working on the movement. And then we started a conversation like that. Did there come a time when you got to know him better? Yes. So during that conversation, he was saying he was staying in a place called Richmond in the United Kingdom, which is very, well, it's the same place I went to dance school. I went to dance school around there, which is like in between Richmond and Twickenham. I'm probably butchering this name. So I said, oh, it's a beautiful area, but you should see the whole of London because I love London. And he said, yeah, that would be cool. Or you could show me. And I was like, oh, yeah. And then he kind of walked away, and I kind of, though, or maybe that's supposed to be thought. Did he just ask me out? I'm not sure. Now that sounds like, okay, so listen, as a girl, if I was in that interaction and I was thinking like, oh my God, did he just ask me out? That sounds like I was part of the flirting too. Just saying. And then later that same day, his hairstylist at the time came over and slipped me this piece of paper and was like, so I opened it up and it was his number. And then he came over to me and said, am I going to hear from you later? And I was like, yeah. So I texted him and then we met. Chaudhry objects to the narrative. And then the judge says if you could follow up with questions. Jabbari apologizes, but that was really to Galloway. So Galloway's like, yeah. So what did you do the next day? We went on a date after work in Richmond. Where did you go on a date? Do you guys, it's obviously on the screen, but is anyone shocked that they go to a bar? Yeah, I can't remember the name of it. Okay, and how was the date? So she's, oh, I could show you around London. London's great. It's so beautiful and lovely. And then they go to a bar. I'm not making fun of that because I drink. I go to bars to hang out. Um, but it's just like she framed it as some like beautiful tour. That was why they were gonna start hanging out if she was just asked out by him. And then the first place is a bar that she doesn't know the name of, but who knows? I only mention that because I know later she does something similar with the restaurant Walters, that they go to the night after they go to the Brooklyn Academy of Music. But moving on. Okay, and how was the date? It was really great. Yeah, it was really nice. How did the relationship progress from there? It was fast. It was kind of like, I think from that first day, we spent every day together, maybe minus a few within the next few months. And what was the defendant like during this period of time? Amazing, really kind and loving. He told me he loved me like very early on, which like was overwhelming, but also I loved it as well. Yeah, so you see all these likes start popping in right here. The the way of delivering answers is changing a little bit, in my opinion. And I loved him, and it was just like he was so caring. It was like he was so caring. Was he or was he not? Like writing me poetry, and every time I left the house, I'd get like a little note, a handwritten note. Yeah, and I felt very loved and cared for and very seen. Felt like he understood me and I understood him, and there was nothing that we were, yeah. So if you notice, she's her answer's very long here compared to, when she had to describe her background of school, that's necessarily going to be a few sentences. But this is a long answer and it has all these likes, and to me that's the kind of answer where you stop paying attention to what you're saying, but you know you're not trying to say certain things. Like you don't want to be like, yeah, I was smitten. I was, down bad. She's just like trying not to say that, but at the same time can't help be like, yeah, he like loved me, but I did love him too. It was like so great. We spent every single day together. I felt seen. Like it kind of gives you some like real honesty here. She was happy to have been 24/7 at this point in their relationship. After you were done filming Ant-Man, did you continue the relationship? Yes. And where were you respectively living at that point? So I was still in the UK, and he was going to the States to start like a kind of big chunk of work on various films. And directing our attention to December of 2021, did there come a time where you saw the defendant? Yes. Where were you? We were between, it would have been in Atlanta, I believe, yeah. Did you live in Atlanta at that point? No. Where were you? Okay, maybe that's supposed to be why, but it says, where were you in Atlanta? And then to visit him. Did there come a time when the defendant became upset with you? Yes. Can you explain for the members of the jury what happened? And this is the dog story, the dog incident. So he has dogs. Now pay attention to that wording. He has dogs, which I love. You know what? I'm going to just say it now because it might not come in the same video and the context might be lost. Later in the testimony, she describes the dogs as being dogs they got together. That we got together. But here, which seems more in line with the timeline of when he got the dogs, so he has dogs. Like, she's acknowledging they were his and he had them regardless of her meeting him. But later she says they're dogs that they got together. But I never met those dogs before. But you got them together. You say later you got them together. And they are protective dogs, which is something that was important to him, to have protective dogs. I hope you're not trying to make that some big masculine scary thing, because a lot of small women want protective dogs to protect themselves and feel safe. So you're trying to turn this into something symbolic. And so I was trying to understand what that meant, because he was like, you have to be this way when you meet them. So you can't put your hand up. They have to respect you. And he was kind of talking me through it. And that's true because a lot of people train their dogs to recognize the signs of aggression. And it could also be innate. So, sudden movements, someone moving your hand up, it could just be a fast, jerking, kind of aggressive motion. You can't do that around a dog when you meet them for the first time. Some dogs are also trained to attack if like an armed intruder comes in, like recognize something like a firearm. So, and I'm not saying that Jonathan Major's dogs were trained to that level of recognition, but it's something that some dogs are trained for. And it's not only is it not unusual, but it's good dog ownership to know your dog and know how your dog needs to meet and acclimate to a new person. And I can't believe that this is supposed to be turned into, oh, he wanted big protective dogs, but what do I know? They have to respect you. And he was kind of talking me through it. Well, she might have checked out right then and there because it seems like she's paralleling this to be kind of the same as she characterizes the Coretta Scott King recording, where she didn't really listen to what his problem was. She just heard, like, you need to have some respect. There's a plan. There's, like, things. It can't just always just be Jabbari's way without thinking about the consequences of things. And she didn't want to hear that. She didn't want to hear that she needed to respect other beings. So they have to respect you. And he was kind of talking me through it. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, slow down. What do I need to do? And I said, the only dog, and there's going to be an objection. But this kind of phrasing here, we have this whole paragraph where she's like uninterested, like disinterested, doesn't understand the purpose. And then she suddenly switches to, according to her, I was like, oh my God, slow down. What do I need to do? As if she was willing to drop to her knees and do everything at his beck and call. But Chaudhry objects as hearsay, and the court overrules it. And that kind of, she's saying what she said. I guess that could be hearsay. I guess it's not offered to prove facts of the matter. But go ahead. The only dog I had cats growing up, and the only dog I had a good relationship with. Okay, so you've only had a good relationship with one dog, and you're confused why somebody would say, hey, let's meet them, let's get you acclimated to the dogs the proper and right way. So you've had a bad experience. The implication here is you've had a bad experience with dogs because you've only had a good relationship with one dog. But you don't understand why this doesn't reconcile. I had a good relationship with is my ex-partners, who we got one when I was with him. Was he aware you had a previous dog? He was, objection, overruled. You can answer that if you know. Yes. Have you ever spoken about that partner previously? Briefly. He knew that I had been with him, yep. What happened when you met the dogs? Well, prior to meeting the dogs was when the mention of my ex and the mention of the dog was when I kind of noticed the anger, kind of. Did you or did you not? Kind of noticed the anger that you were talking about when he got angry at me. It was like, yeah, that was the first time he raised his voice to me. So this is, we're in December 2021 and we're establishing this pattern and he raises his voice. Can you explain what the defendant was upset with you about? Objection, overruled. And I think it's a transcription style that they're not notating all the actual objection statements. I doubt that there's going to be a lot that are just objection with nothing else and overruled with nothing else. So I think that's just a transcription style. Just the mention of the ex. How dare I mention him? How dare I talk about his dog? Like I'm talking about the physical appearance of my ex, talking about how it's embarrassing for him that I dated him and he has to live with that. And I should know that's not okay, and I shouldn't mention him. His dog is pathetic, all this kind of stuff, but in a raised vocal tone. When you say raised vocal tone, can you explain what that means? Shouting at me. Why didn't you just say he was shouting at you in the first place? Like, why all these kind ofs and vocal tone and then, oh, he was shouting at me once someone like kind of like nudges you to say, what do you mean? What was he doing? Where were you when this conversation took place? I was sat on the sofa and he stood over me. And how did this? So you were there? Were you there meeting the dogs already? And you're just like sitting down, and this doesn't make sense. And how did this impact you? It was the first time I felt scared of him. And how, if at all, did that change your behavior? I just knew to never mention my ex again and never mention anyone I kind of dated before. All right, is that the end of that incident? Yeah, the judge is like, this is boring. Let's move on. So this is where, as Danny told us, after all of the descriptions of these incidences, incidences to me kind of implies like some action actually happened, but they call all these things incidences. And after each one, the court gives this instruction. So, ladies and gentlemen, you just heard about an incident that Ms. Jabbari testified happened between her and Mr. Majors in December of 2021, and that evidence is not offered and must not be considered for the purpose of proving that the defendant had a propensity or predisposition to commit the crime charged in this case. It's offered as evidence for your consideration as background information. If you find the information or evidence is believable, you may consider it for that limited purpose and for no other purpose. Oh, these people asked for the jury charges like 3 times. So, I mean, do you think that this is like really understood? And once something's heard, it's heard anyway. And maybe not this situation, but sometimes when you're hearing things and you can't hear the okey doke, you're not used to recognizing the okey doke. If someone's sitting up there with an accent, like a cute accent, you're not going to recognize a certain jargon that they use. The demeanor might be harder to recognize because you might be sitting there trying to understand the actual words coming out of their mouth, and you might miss some of those signs. Like I'm pointing out, her grammar will change. The word choice will change. She'll start adding in a bunch of likes and kind ofs for some answers that you don't see at all in answers to other certain types of questions. But when we're able to read this, we're able to repeat, look at the words again, see them on paper. Sitting there, you are just going to recognize it maybe by the tone or if you catch all of the words. But otherwise, if you're just hearing all this stuff like constantly, yeah, he was controlling, here's another incident where he was controlling and shouting and yelling, like you might sit there and not realize that this might not be true or a proper characterization. So even if you're being instructed to not consider that as something to prove that the defendant had a propensity to commit the crime he's charged for in this case, how are you going to actually disregard it? But anyway. And then, okay, just making sure everyone can still hear me. And hi, Jane. And yes, I agree. This whole situation is just on another level. And the transcripts I've only been able to read through day 1, but I've seen some other parts from other days that people are going through and posting about on X, and the transcripts only make it seem like more bullshit of a case, honestly. Directing your attention to June of 2022. Did you have any plans that month? Yes. What were they? Oh, and this is the Glastonbury Festival. Same every year. Me and my friends go to a music festival called Glastonbury. Where is that music festival at? It's in the UK. How long have you been going to the festival? About 10 years. How long is the festival? It's about 5 days long. And what do you do at the festival? Okay, what do you do? It's just really huge. The whole place gets considered as a religion itself when it's there. And so, what do you do at the festival? And let me talk about the object. Let me not say what I do. And there's different activities, loads of different musical acts. It's like yoga, everything, food, and pretty much my whole social, friends and extended circles, like people go. So it's like a nice thing to do. Okay, what did you do at the festival though? None of this. What, if any, conversations did you have with the defendant before going to the festival? I kind of pre-warned him that because it's so densely populated with people, the signal's not very good. And we spoke a lot, obviously, not being in the same country, so we spoke on the phone every day multiple times and would text really frequently. So I just had to warn him I'm not going to have great signal. I'm going to try and send you texts, but it's not, yeah, we won't be able to have this ease of conversation, basically. And was the defendant responsive to this? Yeah, he was aware of it, and he said, just try if you can, but he understood I was going. Did you go? Yes. What happened while you were at the festival? I had no signal on my phone. I'm going to need a tissue, sorry. So are you crying? Take your time. Yeah, and then the jury sits here and she cries every time she has to talk about. So yeah, I think those, oh, don't consider this. I mean, how could you not consider it when there's like a physical reaction coming from the person that's sitting on the stand talking about it? Anyway, I had no service on my phone. What would happen is in the evenings when everybody is asleep, the service would go through. So some texts would go through. Oh, so this is like a multi-day festival. Okay. So in the evenings when everybody is asleep, the service would go through. This is not how cell phone technology like really works. Like, when would this have been? This had to have been 2021, 2022. So it was 2022. It says right before the event starts. So in 2022, nobody all day has. She could have just said, let me just turn my phone off and put it in my pocket in case water spills on it or something, or I don't want to drop it and damage it, or I don't have pockets on the clothes I'm wearing, or I don't want someone to pickpocket me and get my phone because it's going to be a crowd of a lot of people and hard to pay attention to. But there's so many people that not a single text message, there's no signal the entire day, but at night it's fine, I can talk to him. Like, it's not patchy signal, it's just complete blackout until it's nighttime, and then the signal's fine. So some texts would go through, but ultimately, yeah, ultimately there was no service. I would text them off my friend's phone because some of them had better service than I, but yeah. Did you receive any text messages? And this is weird because the media kind of summed this part up as, because she hadn't texted him. And then he got mad that she hadn't texted him back or whatever. But she is saying that she texted him at the night when she tried to text him and he would get the text at night because then they would go through. And also that I would text him off my friend's phone because some of them had better service than I. So that implies she sent more than one text from a friend's phone, and it also implies she sent a text from more than one friend's phone to make sure she was sending him texts throughout this festival time. But the media reported it as if she wasn't answering, he didn't get a response from her, and he snapped. But here we have this 3 different ways that she says she was sending him texts, so the media's coverage of this sucks. Did you receive any messages from the defendant? Yeah. What was the tone of those messages? Not very nice. Can you explain what you mean by that? Just that I shouldn't be there and how dare I, just like with the dog, how dare you? How dare I go? I don't know. That sounds to me like someone who feels offended that someone said something to them and that's the way they're wording it themselves. This is a really important week for me and you should have turned around and left, basically. And I said, oh, should I leave? Is that the conversation you had while you were at the festival? At the festival, it was kind of a slow back and forth of like, I love you, I'm here, I'm safe, I'm trying to get a hold of you. And he would just say that this is really upsetting, but like, yeah, sure, have fun, yeah. It sounds like a bunch of messaging back and forth. And he mentioned the defendant said that it was important to him. What about that week was important to him? Objection, overruled, if you know. Yes, he was filming a film that week and he had to get like his body into a certain place. He was becoming a bodybuilder and he was just quite stressed because it was the first film he was producing it and he was leading in it and it was a stressful week for him. You said you were able to get in contact with the defendant throughout? Yeah, like, yeah. Is it yeah? I can just say yeah. The communication wasn't fluid, but ultimately, yeah, some texts would go through, and my friend's phone went through. I bumped into one of his friends when I was there. I said to him, oh my gosh, I can't get a hold of him. Can you send him, like, just a picture of me and you so he knows I've seen you and I'm okay? Okay, and what happened next? From the messages, that he was quite upset with me, and just wasn't really enjoying it. And I just wasn't really enjoying it fully because I just felt guilty for being there. So I left, basically. Why did you feel guilty? I just felt bad. Like, he obviously felt like he needed me, and I felt like I shouldn't have gone. And I wasn't having as much fun as I normally did, so I just thought, I'm just going to leave. What happened after you left? As soon as I got into, like, further out, so when I drove back, okay, hold on. As soon as I got into, like, further out, so when I drove back, I stopped in, like, a service station, and I tried to call him and text him and tried to contact him, basically, and said, I'm out of it. Like, I have service now. I'm here. Did you get in contact with the defendant at that point? He wouldn't answer the phone, but I did text him. Were you eventually able to get in contact with the defendant? Yeah. He would text me some texts. What does this mean? This is like you go back to speaking generally. He would text me some texts. What was the substance of those text messages, if you remember? Yeah, he just said that he was, like, so disappointed in me, like, how dare I? He thought he could trust me with our relationship, and with the fact I went was just embarrassing, and, like, you're just out here drinking. Hey, and have we heard, since that first question, what did you do at the festival? Did we hear anything about what she did at the festival? Did we ever hear any mention of drinking? You're just out. Oh, back to the drive. And yeah, the links to the transcripts are, what was I on, page like 38? The links to the transcripts are in the description if I started the stream right. So you guys can go and read these. If you notice, there's also Holly Blakey, Officer Swain, and Ryan Strick, who was the DEA digital evidence guy. And we're struggle streaming. Okay, certain place, bodybuilding. Okay, yeah. So you're just out there drinking with your friends and you don't care about me, and, like, I'm having a really hard week and you shouldn't have been there. You should have known to turn around as soon as you got there and there was no signal. That doesn't even make sense, because if you told him that there would be no signal, that doesn't make sense. If you told him there would be no signal before you even left to go, like, you, like, preemptively told him, hey, I'm gonna go to this thing I've gone to for 10 years that, instead of telling you what I do there, I'm just gonna talk about how big of a festival it is. And I'm not gonna have any signal, but I'm also gonna text you throughout the day and text you at night and text you from at least one person's phone, and then also send you a selfie with some guy that you also know that I ran into. Like, I don't know, this is just, I get it. Some people in couples, and it can work either way or both ways. Some people just, as soon as someone leaves, they feel like a little bit lost, and there could be, like, sadness because that person leaves and goes to do something that they should have the right and freedom to do, maybe. But there can be, like, feelings of missing somebody. But the details, the way she describes it, are what's unrealistic to me about it. Not the idea that someone could be, like, upset or jealous or concerned or insecure, but just the way she goes through the details, the way she answers the questions about you and her, but only describes an object or general phenomenon of what people in general do. And then these little details about the text just seem to go all over the place for me. Like, but yeah, that's, like, literally, what did you do? And it takes us, okay, how many lines? So we're on page 40, line 17 of page 40. Let's see. And then 24 of page 36. So what, that's 4 pages with 25 lines each. We get to line 17, and that's where finally, what do you do at festivals? And finally we see the word drinking mentioned after all that. And remember, this isn't just like, for this to be paranoia that someone's drinking and maybe they weren't drinking or they were drinking and it's not a big deal, whatever. But this is the same chick that careened around the wall when Jonathan Majors goes to the restroom before they're about to leave a restaurant, and then she, like, scuttlebutts her way back to the table to pick up this margarita drink and chug it down, set it back on the table, and when she was asked about it, she didn't want to say that that's what she did. They had to, like, play this video clip and be like, are you not picking up this glass and taking a drink of it? Yeah, I guess that's what I'm doing. Like, that's why the drinking is relevant, because you had an opportunity to discuss what you do at this festival, and you clearly couch your own behavior, if you even mention it at all, among all these other details of these generalisms that nobody was asking you about. And then start sprinkling in a bunch of likes and kind ofs when you're at, like, but maybe because she had an accent, maybe the jury wasn't privy to recognizing that kind of thing. This was all in response to not being able to communicate with him? Yeah. And you said the defendant wasn't answering his calls? Yes, correct. How long, approximately, was it until you were able to speak with the defendant? I can't tell you exactly how many days. Well, you've tried to tell us it was like daily, and like, I think there were potentially had been like a few phone calls, but he was working as well. So I don't think we spoke on the phone for a few days. There's like so many. I think there were potentially had been like a few phone calls. But we just had 3 pages of you talking about like all the details of how you would communicate with him on this festival. But now, as the festival ends, you're like, oh, I don't know, a few potential maybe thinks, sort of, kind of, maybe. Like, it's just so weird. Let's see. Yeah, she got white boy wasted. She's not being truthful and just trying to create issues to dismiss or hide her behavior. Yeah, and like, if you say things enough time, like a lie enough times, it becomes true, right? Well, if you say something was happening more than one time, it makes it seem like that kind of behavior is true also, right? It seems like that's the strategy she's trying to latch onto in hopes that she could say the relationship, everything I did in the relationship was I gave everything for him. And he just never saw it. He never appreciated it. Can't believe he left me. Can't believe he did all this to me. Like, it's like I don't know if it's just to like cover her own tracks or to get back at him, or if to this day she's still really that in denial or that unwilling to have any type of self-awareness or accountability that she still is truly trying to rationalize some of this stuff to herself. And that's what I think is wild to see. Because, I mean, that kind of thing just doesn't turn off like a light. You're not just going to, this relationship ends and your accountability problems suddenly solve themselves. But who knows? Yeah, she sent texts from random people's phone numbers throughout the day and took photos with someone he knows while she's being chaotic and doesn't understand why that would be frustrating to the recipient. And you know that, yeah. Oh yeah, so even if yeah, that's true. So she's in the UK and I don't know, did they say like it was like Los Angeles or something filming at the time? Maybe you guys know where he was filming at the time. But yeah, if the texts go through at night for her at the festival, maybe like 11, that's like 4 in the morning if you're over on the East Coast. I think that's like 2 in the morning if you're over in California. If these texts go through at midnight, I mean, that's like sleep hours. So who knows? Jabroni on a burner phone. Ah. Yeah, and this is like, in my head, I'm like, yeah, signal gets patchy once in a while when I drive through a weird area or go into a giant building. I'm like, this is outdoors. This isn't in the middle of nowhere. And this happened in 2022, so it's not like, Y2K where everybody is going to use their cell phones and everything's going to shut off, and this isn't 20 years ago either, so it just doesn't make sense. And why did all of your friends' phone signals work? Although I don't know, because didn't Jonathan Majors provide her a second cell phone while she was in the States? Maybe that was just because it was an unlocked like international phone, who knows? Um yeah, maybe she really just had a jabroni phone. Okay, and here we're gonna hear all of the things that she did to be the good person, the one giving 150% in their relationship, even though she should have been smarter and known better. So, what did you do in response to the limited communication? I just tried to make him feel secure again, like I did love him. Why do you have to reassure him that you did love him? Even her words are weird. And I would be there for him, and I understood that I had misplaced his trust by going. Not by going. You called it out. What did he say? And that's the same thing when we hear that Curtis Scott King recording, he's like coming to the house, there's like a plan and an appearance, and you drink a lot and you come back to the house not just drunk. I could have let that go, but you also bring someone else into the home. And she's just like, I'm sorry, I went out. That's not what he was mad about. That's not, you're looking at A, and he wasn't mad about A. He told you after you did a happenstance, you happened to do this A thing by going out, it led to you doing B and C. And I'm upset about B and C. And she's like, I'm sorry for A. And we see this here. I understood that I'd misplaced his trust by going and that I would never do that again. Like, the issue is that she went. I promised him I would never go somewhere without him and without service, and like I would turn around. So you promised that you would never go, and also that you would turn around if you do go. Like, what are you adding this in for? And I just felt regretful that I had upset him in that way. And he wasn't talking to me. You felt regretful because he wasn't talking to you. You didn't feel regretful because he was upset with you, because you're still not understanding why he was upset with you. You're trying to distance it, but the reason you're regretful is because he wasn't talking to you. How long did it take you to answer? Oh, I don't know, a few days, but he was busy. He was filming at the time. What are you really regretful about? So I was just saying everything that I knew turns him around from those kinds of moods. So by this time, she knows all the things she has to say to turn him around from those kind of moods. Just basically filling him with love and security, I guess. Yeah, well, if you have to reassure him that you did love him, that means there was an absence of that being recognized, right? So just basically filling him with love and security. What do you have to put basically there, I guess? And I'm probably sounding so nitpicky, but the lack of any direct answer or direct description, everything has to be couched with a, not just one like or basically or one kind of, there's like multiple distancing language within one little detail. Every time she shares one detail that she could have used as a chance to humanize herself and maybe take some accountability or be empathetic to somebody else. Like, just because someone has an insecurity problem doesn't mean that they're a monster. But instead of saying like, hey, I understand and we talked about it and it's things that we have to work on, she seems like she's just kind of like, oh, fine, I just won't go to and do anything anymore. I'm just going to stay home. I'm going to be a Sally homemaker, or if there's a British equivalent of like a Sally homemaker. And it's just wild. Like, to me, that's her personality. I really think she doesn't think or will never admit that there's a reason someone could be upset with her or want her to do something better, show something better, communicate better. She thinks any type of request like that is like comparable to actual abuse. And that's crazy. You said he wasn't speaking with you. Did you understand that was because he was working? Galloway trying to help her out. Chaudhry, objection, asked and answered. No, that's overruled. You can answer that. So, may you repeat that? So Galloway repeats the question. Yes. You said he wasn't speaking with you. Did you understand that was because he was working? And then now we actually get the real reason. He wasn't speaking to me because he was angry at me for going to the festival. We're going to see a lot of this confusion on this same day of testimony with how she describes the buttons in the elevator, and Priya Satyani, the 360 manager that Jonathan Majors had. We're going to see this same type of, oh, he probably wasn't talking to me because he was busy working or something. But then, no, yeah, he wasn't talking to me because he was angry with me. Just that inability to recognize something or admit to something at first, but then you're forced into a corner where you admit it, or you slip up and actually tell the truth and acknowledge the truth. And then Chaudhry, objection, speculation. He told me that, overruled. And he told me that, you weren't getting text, but he told you that. Who knows? But yeah. Did there come a time when he did speak to you again? Yes. And what did he say to you in substance? It was when I said that I would go to places without my friends and that he was my priority. He then was like, "You don't have to say that, but it means a lot." Then we kind of just picked up back to normal. And then we have like nothing to prove this. We don't have any of these text messages from where they're like texting and reconciling. Like, I don't get why those couldn't have actually been submitted here to show, but guess we just have to take her word. Did this incident impact your behavior in the relationship moving forward? Yeah. Also my relationship when I wasn't with him, if that makes sense. Can you explain it to the members of the jury? Sorry, I'm not talking to you, yeah. Just more I would feel anxious if I was with my friends and I wasn't talking to him constantly because I would worry, yeah. I was just worried of the reaction of that. Now, we opened this, their relationship started, they were 24/7. And she loved it. It was lovely. It was amazing. Oh, he said he loved me really early. And I was like, oh, but also I loved him too. And I told him that. And she like relished in that. And then we just saw that she was regretful for going to the festival, but mostly because he wasn't answering and responding to her. And then we see this here, that she would feel anxious. I was with my friends and I wasn't talking to him constantly. Yeah, you feel anxious, not because you're with your friends. You feel anxious if he wasn't talking to you constantly. Because I would worry. Yeah, I was just kind of worried of the reaction of that. Let's see. Yeah, like the comment is so fake, I guess. Like it just seems like can she make it through an answer to a question without kind of basically sort of like maybe I guess it's just so much. And the abuse was her alcoholism and like if she had a drinking problem, like that's a common thing with alcoholism. You're genuinely unaware of the way you act, the things that you say. You're generally distanced from who you are in, when you're in a regular demeanor versus the personality that might come out or the way you might be when you have like an alcohol episode. And, that's not to shame alcoholism in any sort of way. I'm just saying, like, this type of, oh, we were like mad about something, and I don't know, he was mad at me, and I just apologized and did everything I could. I didn't do anything wrong at all. Oh, should I have mentioned drinking was involved here? Oops, sorry, forgot that detail. Like, that's what makes it seem extra relevant to consider the way alcoholism works because her behavior seems consistent with the behavior, the denial, the genuine denial, like the genuine, did I really do that last night type of thing. It's not just like, I drank and I know I did something. I'm just going to pretend I don't know. There is like a genuine lack of recall of certain things that go on with that. And this seems like that to me personally. And then also, thanks Fast Like a Bear for shouting out the GoFundMe. Yeah, so the transcripts were really expensive. Don't put yourself on the struggle bus, but if you can and do want to contribute to help, because I came out of pocket, it was like $2,600 to grab this set of transcripts because it's New York. It's a New York thing. They're really expensive per page. It was $4.30 per page, but yay, transparency. But that link is in the description if you can and do want to chip in to help get some of that back. But please don't put yourself in a stressful position just to donate money because I was going to get these anyway. Because I can't believe this case was so lacking in transparency. And yeah, like I agree, like the judgment, like I'm not really even trying to fault her for not, I'm not trying to fault anyone if they don't know something that they were doing. I'm just, it's important to recognize it, especially when it's being used as testimony to charge someone else with something like assault. All this background is based on her pieced together recall of instances where she may have been drinking and may not actually remember anything, but she's testifying to it with, I think, like, basically it was like this. And even though the jury's being instructed to only consider it as, maybe, but not exactly a propensity, for it to be so lacking in actual recall is concerning. And I'm also concerned that, maybe you can argue that the jurors did question her credibility because they did acquit him on the 2 charges, but at the same time, they were just kind of like, yeah, he's guilty of the other 2. So I feel like they didn't really peep the credibility issues the way maybe I'm able to through text, because I can read it slowly. But yeah. So where were we? Oh, so, yep, they give this instruction again because they're moving on. That was the end of that. They're moving on to July 2022. It's going to be the candle throwing. And this is a little also. So they give that limiting instruction. Don't consider this, just consider it for a limited purpose. And then directing your attention to July of 2022. Where were you? In between the UK and Los Angeles. Okay, and where were you in Los Angeles? To visit Jonathan. And what was the defendant doing in Los Angeles? He was filming, working. And how long were you in Los Angeles? I would go for like a week at a time or a little longer. He kind of made this rule we wouldn't ever spend more than 3 weeks apart. Okay, at least you're acknowledging that we made this rule. We kind of made this rule. It would be like 3 weeks max. That will be it. So when you were in Los Angeles, what was the defendant's demeanor like at that time? Well, he was filming a film where he was being a bodybuilder, and he was in a really strict diet and training regime. He had a lot of pressure, as I said earlier, like producing and leading in a film, so his demeanor was stressed, I guess, if that's a description of a demeanor. Yes. And how did that impact your relationship? It felt a bit like I was just kind of walking on eggshells. Like it was just had to kind of be perfect. Because if I did one little thing that was maybe said one thing, and the temper would kind of show, and I just wanted to avoid it. Because I wasn't working when I was there. I was working in London, so I felt like I would just try to make it as seamless as possible for me. This is so many likes, and then she's just like, because I wasn't working when I was there. And did there come a time when the defendant did become upset with you? Yeah. Can you describe that to the members of the jury? I'm so sorry. Okay, so she's crying again. I'm so sorry. It's okay. Take your time. Sorry. And then the judge says, Ms. Jabbari, if you ever need a break, just let us know and we could take a brief recess. I'm sorry. Just let us know. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I could tell he was really tense, so I just kind of I just basically went over to him and said, like, what's wrong? You can talk about these things. You don't have to hold it all inside. So she goes over and does everything. What's wrong, basically? And just tried to say, like, it's me. Like, just talk it out. If you're stressed, it's good to just, like, get it out. And during the course of this conversation, did the defendant become more upset with you? Chaudhry objects, objection leading, overruled. She had already said yeah. She repeats yes. How so? He just exploded, basically, is the word I would use to describe it. Yeah. Can you describe what the defendant's body language is like? Tense, yeah. His face kind of changes when he gets in that place. He's a big guy, so you just want to step back. And we heard this quote. This quote was, like, put out there. But my thought was, like, you hear a line like that, and then you know she chased him for 5 blocks. And that's the kind of inaction. He's a big guy, so you want to step back. If you say that, it's obviously not true because you clearly chased somebody. But if you had a kind of in there, you can kind of get away with it. You kind of want to just step back. You just want to, but you don't want to. You don't actually do step back. So it's like she'll go halfway to be like, yeah, you'd want to step back because he's supposed to be big and scary because she wants to put that idea out there. But you can't just say, he's a big guy, so I stepped back because I was scared, because I was actually scared in that moment. She just describes, you just want to step back, as if someone else in general would want to step back. But this is your testimony. You should be able to say, I wanted to step back from him because he's a big guy. I wanted to stay in that car instead of chasing after him because he's a big guy, regardless of whether or not I wanted to know who that woman in the phone was. What do you mean by the word exploded? Yeah, it was like a violent temper. It was full of rage and aggression. And he was throwing things, shouting in my face, throwing objects. And then the court allows a little bit of leading. I mean, I guess there was an objection there. So you could lead a little on this. And I mean, I think that could be a valid objection, but the judge, according to, I think Jimmy and Danny both agreed, it seemed like he wanted to hear it. He wanted to hear the tea. So that's that in action. Where were you in relation to the defendant at this point? I was just trying to get away from him. Okay, you just said you kind of want you just want to step back. You were trying to get away from him. How many bedrooms did you have where you were staying? There was 3 bedrooms, but we were in the master at the time. You mentioned the defendant was throwing things. Where was he when he was throwing things? He started off very close to me, and I left and kind of tried to hide a bit. And then heard walking around and just tried to use my words to calm him down. And you said he was very close to you. Could you describe to the members of the jury how close you were to the defendant when he probably was stood like where you are. Could you explain the layout? And that probably means like it was witness stand to where Galloway was standing. Could you explain the layout? Do you want to just state for the record that distance? Yes, approximately between the witness and the first juror. Oh, so she points to the juror and says approximately where you are to the juror? The one that was sitting there smiley at her? All right. And approximately how far is that, would you say? Like, I mean, I don't know American words, but I would say what you like is a very Valley Girl thing. So I think you're well acquainted with like Valley Girl talk. Like, I don't know what that is. And so she's trying to say a meter, yard, whatever. Could you explain the layout of the room? Yes, it's like there's a master bed, a double bed, and then space around it. And then behind it is like the closet, which you could also walk around. And behind the closet was the bathroom, which you could also walk around. So there was no doors. So she can't like close the door and hide. I guess that's what we're getting at. It was like, yeah, the bed, the closet, and the bathroom. Yeah. And where was the defendant standing in relation to this? Start off in the bathroom section. And then as I kind of tried to get away to the bedroom, that's when he started throwing things. And then it kind of stayed in that area. Because once he was in that, so he wasn't following you. If when he starts throwing things, because earlier you said it starts in the master bedroom, then you said it starts in the bathroom, but you move to the bedroom, but that you're really close, but then you try to run away and you try to hide. Then if you say he kind of stayed in that area, and he wasn't like chasing you anywhere. So you say that you like try to go and hide, but he wasn't chasing you. Because once he was in that like rage, sorry, so she must be sniffling. Yeah, once that started, that was maybe in the bedroom. Now it's maybe in the bedroom area. Are you crying because you just realized that you said 2 minutes ago it started in the bedroom and then you said bathroom and now you have to demonstrate that you're not actually really sure? Because she didn't say it kind of started in the bathroom or kind of started in the bedroom. She said it started in the bedroom, then she says it starts in the bathroom, and then she has to say, oh, once that started, yeah, it was maybe in the bedroom. I think she sniffles when she realizes she could come off as a liar. What kind of objects was the defendant throwing? Just anything in his kind of reaching distance, which is just kind of like candles and like, yeah, bedroom objects. You said you were trying to hide. Where did you go in the apartment? I just went to like the kind of bit in between the closet and things like that. I walked around so I could see where he was, so as to know he wasn't going to come for me. So you don't actually say he was coming for you. You say earlier he stayed in the bedroom once this all started. You walked around so I could see where he was, so as to know he wasn't going to come for me. So you're just putting the idea out there, the paranoia out there, the speculation out there that, yeah, anyone could have chased someone else out of a room. And your testimony is just to create this image, but it's not anything that was actually happening. You're just painting the picture. And were you able to see the defendant at that point? Yeah. Okay, and what, if anything, did you hear? He was really shouting, really just really angry, yeah. How are you feeling at that point? Scared and knowing that I needed to calm him down because I wanted it to stop. And then Galloway says, I'm showing defense counsel and handing the witness what's been pre-marked as People's Exhibit 6. Your Honor, I thought they were going to redact the hearsay at the top. They go through this. They're fine with it. It's submitted. Mr. Jabbari, do you recognize this? Yes. What do you recognize it to be? Some of the objects he had thrown. Where was that photo taken? I was in the bedroom there. But they ask where the photo was, not where you were. Where were you with John? Were you in Los Angeles when that photo was taken? Yes. What part of Los Angeles? West Hollywood. What was the date? The 9th of July, 2022. Is this a fair and accurate description of the object the defendant threw on July 9th, 2022? And that's where you see, like, there's, like, the broken glass. There's, like, a Bible in the picture. Yeah. And now offer People's Exhibit 6 into evidence so they publish it to the jury. And then, all right, all members of the jury have now seen the exhibit. Mr. Jabbari, you said you were in the bedroom when this picture was taken. I took this photo. Where was the defendant when you took this photo? It was the next, like, in the next room or something, not in the bedroom. It. Where was the defendant when you took this photo? It was the next, like, in the next room or something, not in the bedroom. Oops. Could you show the members of the jury what objects the defendant threw? Everything you see, he threw. And there's a dent, like, the dent in the wall is one of the candles. And there's glass where one of the candles, or maybe two of the candles, smashed. I'm not sure. When the defendant threw these objects, how close were you to those objects? The first thing he threw was the candle, and I stood back there, and he was probably about there. Let the record reflect that Mr. Jabbari pointed to, am I allowed to do that? Your Honor, I can't see what's happening, Chaudhry says. Okay, I was stood there, and he was stood here. The court, do you want Mr. Jabbari to put a marking on the photo, and then we could show it to the defense counsel so the defense could see exactly where? Yes, Your Honor. So they have her draw a circle where he was, and an X where she was. All right, if we could show that to the defense, this way they know exactly at each stage what has been put on the exhibit. And then Chaudhry's like, can I just hear the testimony again of court? Do you want to ask the question again? Galloway says yes. Mr. Jabbari, the place that you marked X, what does that indicate? X is me. And we don't really have this picture, so we can't see. All right, do you want to have Mr. Jabbari put the X maybe in parentheses Mr. Jabbari, or Galloway says yes. Could you put your initials next to that? Just initials next to where I was? Yes. Thank you. Can you show that to the members of the jury? They're like a mess. Do I give it to them? Publish it. Thank you. Mr. Jabbari, could you explain why you took this photograph? I took the photo because the shift in his temper was something that I was aware of. And, sorry, so she's sniffling again. It's okay. Take your time. Yeah, and I just wanted to remember, like, how I know I kept forgiving him, but I just wanted to, like, have a bit of memory of him. And after the defendant threw these objects, what happened next? He started, and I was saying to him, like, please stop and, you know, calm down. Like, you don't need to be doing this. And then he started, like, really crying, like, shaking, crying, and saying, like, self-hatred kind of things. Like, he's a monster, and just, yeah, really crying was the main thing that happened. Was he shouting or was he crying? What did you do in response? I, like, kind of hugged him. So he's crying and you come and take this picture. I, like, kind of hugged him and held him and just, like, it's okay. This is me. Do you want to talk about it? Because it gets to this point and you don't need it to be like that. And how did this incident impact your relationship? Well, immediately afterwards, like, he actually was quite nice again. He was basically apologetic and said, you know, it probably is. He actually kind of thanked me for my patience with him in that moment of the bodybuilding. So she's attributing why this all happened to the bodybuilding, creating that picture and the stress, and said, it's not going to be like this, you know, it's just this moment. It's really hard, and I understood. Did you continue? But they don't ask here, did he tell you this? Like, earlier she was like, he told me this is why. And now she's just like, yeah, it was because he was bodybuilding. That's why this happened. Did you continue your relationship with, yeah, the defendant? Okay. Did you change your behavior after this incident? I think with every kind of temper that came, I was trying to learn the triggers. So I guess the element of trying not to let it get to that point I felt was my responsibility. Is it fair to say you felt responsible for the defendant's emotions? Yeah. And then they do the limiting instruction again because they're going to move on to the next incident. It's call time in 2 minutes here. So I do have to run and jump. Yes, shaking my head, this woman, I agree. You can tell, like, I can't even read this without, like, every 2 seconds. Yeah, and I agree. If he was to get on the stand and talk about like, yeah, we went out and drank together all the time and then had these fights, it could suggest that he was drinking just as much, you know. Um, she brings up all these incidents, but we never hear the actual never. It's always just like, oh, I don't know, he was just like shouting and it was because of the bodybuilding or because he was mad for no good reason or something. Yeah, can't believe his career is ruined because of this. It's insane. Oh yeah, and guys, he is doing like a Good Morning America interview on Monday, and some of it's supposed to air. Parts of it are going to air on Hulu. Um, so that'll be interesting. Just search like YouTube or X. I have a busy week and a half. I'm gonna try to like keep going through these transcripts and comment on them. But I don't have time. I don't have a dedicated time to schedule them. So they're just gonna pop in and out. But all the other creators, you know, Pam, Dre, Chillmonger, Hines, like a bunch of people on X, they're talking about all the stuff that's happening still. They're looking at the transcripts, and they're gonna watch that Good Morning America thing. I'll pop in when I can. I'll go live when I can. It'll just seem really unorganized because we're doing like a championship tournament for the next 2 weeks here. Um, but yeah, sorry, I gotta jump out, so sorry if I'm missing anyone's comments. But I'll jump on and we'll keep reading. We'll start with the September incident with the transcripts. If you want to read them on your own, the link is in the description. The GoFundMe is there too if you want to chip in to cover the cost